rolling across the sky as the day started to rain, teardrops of blood across the land, lost in their visions of doubt, buried in their pain. White man had all to say. We were left to tax turn as we watched everything burn, and the heavens cried on the trail of tears. On some beaten shore, we watched the ships come in, one by one our land wore thin. We could just watch with closed eyes, as the promises made were just lies. They said you don't belong here anymore. Behind their masks, they wore a disguise, and the heavens cried on the trail of tears. Blood spilled on our sacred ground, leaving an unwanted stain. Where mighty warriors once made a stand, we could never walk hand in hand. When they lived by so much greed, we watched our people fall, thousands must bleed. Still, all we could do is try, and the heavens cried on the trail of tears. Guided by the spirit wind, we held on to our pride, something they couldn't take away, as so many died. Through our darkest years, and the heavens cried on the trail of tears.
Thank you, JT, for that lovely poem about the Trail of Tears. Next, Braden will talk about the past and elaborate more on the Trail of Tears and how accurate that poem actually was.
The Native Americans have been greatly discriminated against in the past. It all started when the Europeans arrived in North America. They had home loss and land loss because of the European claims, and that was the beginning of it all. One of the next major discriminations was the Spanish missions, where the Catholic religion was forced down upon the Indians because the Spanish wanted to convert them to be more humane in their ways. And then there's the Manifest Destiny, where the U.S. citizens tried to go all the way from sea to sea, regardless of the consequences of their actions. This started the land being taken away from the Indians by they either purchased it or they just took it away by either just moving them out or by killing the Native Americans. And then the Trail of Tears was all involved in this. It started when Jackson took president in 1928, and he signed the Indian Removal Act in 1930. It was forced removal after the offers of compensation for the land of the Indians. One of the major Cherokee removals was the Treaty of New Dakota, where they signed a treaty that clarified they would have to leave within 2 years of the treaty being signed. Most did not move, which caused the government to move in and round up the Indians, which they built stockades and forced the Indians into the stockades to await removal or deportation by train. By 1837, over 46,000 Native Americans had been removed from their homelands in the southeastern USA and transported to the mid-central of the country. Over on the Choctaw Trail of Tears, they're part of it. 4,000 of the 13,000 removed died along the way. And then in 1890, there was the massacre at Wounded Creek, where U.S. soldiers were apparently reported to be shot upon by the Native Americans. And they claimed that most of the deaths in the at Wounded Knee Creek, were unavoidable because of the massive shooting by the Native American upon them. The official investigation of Wounded Knee, initiated by General E.D. Scott, said that the Indians did fire the first shots, and it was just self-defense by the soldiers. But the true story probably will never be told.
As you just heard Braden talk about how Native Americans were discriminated against in the past, here's somebody that has been discriminated against more in the present than the past.
Okay. My grandpa was half Indian, and he used to call all Indians blanket asses. I don't know if that's something.
Okay, carry on.
And his dad was, said his mom was the Native American. And in Tryon, there was, it's a really small community, and even in, little tiny communities, there can be these polarized areas of likes, not likes, riches. I mean, even if there's just 3 people that are rich, they're still the rich people. The Indians were considered the poorest, and the ones that were always on, getting the help, like from the government and stuff like that. And they were considered the ones that nobody wanted their kids to be going out with or hanging out with. But in a class where there's 20 kids, everybody's friends, Think of it that way. And so growing up, my best friends were Indians. And I was just as dark as they were because I was a quarter blood. And it was just really interesting to grow up in that environment and see.
That's really cool. This is good. This is good. What are your opinions on the Trail of Tears? Like, do you feel that it was handled well, or do you feel like they could have done it differently, or?
Yeah, I think it was done really poorly. I think, looking back now, if those people had done that they would be, I think the people that organized it would have been tried for war crimes in today's society.
This is good. This is really good. What are your opinions on Native American mascots, such as, do you feel that these give bad stereotypes, or do you feel like they're just kind of insignificant?
I just think that they're cartoons.
Okay. Do you feel the Native Americans are discriminated against? And you said yes. And then you can share the story
I do think, and even today in the workplace, you can see a little bit of that. I think that they're considered undereducated for the most part. Most people don't consider them well educated or very highly sought after as an employee.
And what do you think we could do to stop this discrimination?
I think it's just like all discrimination, in that you gotta see that the people underneath are the same.
This is beautiful. This is gonna be really, really good. Okay, please.
While you heard the last interview was a student's point on the subject of discrimination against Native Americans. This upcoming interview is from the teacher's point on why it happens.
So, do you think that Native Americans are discriminated against in some places and in some times?
Sure. I haven't necessarily seen Native Americans discriminated against here at Soar Junior High, but there's some things that I do see and know as far as maybe a larger perspective. Native Americans still have the highest dropout rate of any ethnicity, and I'm not so sure that that's a discrimination issue, but it is a problem that needs to be addressed. Maybe it's not being addressed because of some discrimination that people hold. Also, there are places and reservations in the United States that are very poor, and so a lot of Native American reservations that students are growing up on suffer from extreme poverty, And a lot of those reservations are in some of those Native American families. There's still very high rates of alcoholism, tobacco use. Like I said, high school dropout rates very high among them. So while these are major problems that the Native Americans face, may be part of our issue of not addressing it quicker has been a racial stereotype.
Yeah, and you said that they have all of these problems, but why do you think that those problems are there because of discrimination from like things like the past? Because you know how basically it all happened where the U.S. just came.
Yeah, as far as like the United States policy toward them, the way that we approached Native Americans in the founding of our country was obviously a mistake. We made huge problems, and they were racial problems. Very similar problems to what we had with African Americans in slavery, except for with the Native Americans, instead of enslaving them, then we waged war and kept moving. But because we didn't see them as a country, there was never like a declaration of war. But I mean, in a lot of ways, yeah, we're still treating them, or we did treat them as some type of enemy that needed to be removed.
Yeah, so maybe because of, do you think that because of that, it kind of lowered their expectations as people, so that's what's causing all of these problems? And how?
Yeah, possibly. I'm not so sure that the majority of Native Americans would make that statement. I think that their expectations haven't been lowered, that as a people they're still very proud, they have a lot to offer culturally, and they've made many advancements, discoveries, they've had a huge impact and have benefited culture. So I'm not so sure they have lower expectations or standards, but at the same time, I think the system that we've created has handicapped them in a lot of ways. One of the Indian reservations that we were talking about was in South Dakota, Pine Ridge, and it has, we give $80 million in federal tax money to that reservation. It's a lot of money, and in some ways, so that can handicap people because you begin to rely on money that's given to you instead of money you work for, and it begins to strip dignity. And so maybe some of our policy in the United States has created the issue itself.
Do you think we need to give them like a chance to?
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Do you think they would try to if we would?
Some would succeed, some would fail, just like any people group that you gave a chance to. But in that, do they become stronger? Well, yeah, of course.
As you just heard Mr. Taylor say, that in a lot of places people develop an image of Native Americans, all of them being drunk and all of them dropping out of school and living off of welfare. Here's somebody that has that feeling towards other Native Americans as well.
So, hi, what's your name?
Robert Pope.
Okay, nice to meet you, Robert. Are you Native American?
Yes.
How much?
A quarter Cherokee.
Okay, that's really cool. What are some of your opinions on the Cherokee? Do you feel it was handled well, or do you feel like they could have done it differently?
It was handled wrong.
Yeah.
It wasn't handled correctly.
What are your opinions on Native American mascots?
Most of them portray the Indians pretty well. There's not any that really discriminate against them.
Okay. Do you feel the Native Americans are discriminated against?
Yes, but I feel that a lot of the discrimination is based on what they do with the money that they're given, and most of them are on welfare, and they should cut that off and have them work for themselves.
Okay. And what do you think we could do to stop the discrimination?
Educate them more.
Okay.
There is some discrimination on Native Americans here in Oklahoma, but there isn't always discrimination. And here's an interview with a student who thinks that Native Americans aren't discriminated in Oklahoma. Do you think that Native Americans are discriminated here in Oklahoma?
Not really, because they are very common here, because obviously they were moved here, which led to a lot of Native American descendants in Oklahoma. So if you were to discriminate against them, then that would be like discriminating against most of Oklahoma.
Yeah. But do you think that in some other areas they would be discriminated against?
It's very possible. If they're minorities, then just like in a lot of other places, that they could easily be discriminated against.
So why
you think they would be discriminated against?
Because of ignorance. People, if they don't know enough about a culture, they'll just assume things. So, like, whenever they learn that you're Native American, they'll think of somebody with feathers on their head and stuff like that.
As you heard Sam say, that there isn't much discrimination against Native Americans here in Oklahoma, mostly because they're the majority here and this is one of their states. But in places like South Dakota where there's reservations for Native Americans to live in, and all of them there live on welfare, people around them develop an image of Native American that's different than others, and that leads to discrimination.
Okay, so, hello, what is your name?
Isabella.
Okay. Are you Native American?
1/8.
An eighth Native American. Okay, this is good. This is good. What are your opinions on the Trail of Tears?
Well, it's really sad because so many people died.
You're right, that is very sad.
And they were forced to leave their homes.
Right, yeah. It's really sad. What are your opinions on Native American mascots?
I think it's bad because they try to see them differently than they were.
Do you feel that it's an accurate portrayal of what Native Americans are today?
I do not.
Okay, and
Also we're not red.
Right, this is a very good comment. This is a very good comment. Look at her beautiful face. This is not a red face. Also, do you feel that Native Americans are as violent as they are portrayed as mascots? Okay, so it's not an accurate portrayal in any way, shape, or form. Because you don't dress like that mascot. I mean, you dress like normal people. Okay, this is good. This is good. Do you feel that you are discriminated against as a Native American? Do people ever make like rude jokes or anything towards you?
No.
Okay.
I've never had anyone do that.
Okay, that's okay. Well, see, you don't really look like a Native American, so they don't really associate that with you. How do you think that we could stop some of this discrimination against Native Americans?
I don't know.
Okay, maybe take away the school mascot?
Yeah, that would probably help.
Yeah. All the interviews we just viewed were of people who have varied points of views on present and past discrimination. Next, I'll talk about more of the present discrimination and how we really need to stop it. Americans are more recently discriminated against, as well as being discriminated against in the past. For example, when they were relocated, they recently discovered that it only constituted for 4% of the U.S. land. And that's really not very much. I mean, think about all those people on the reservation. Today, the World Watch Institute notes that 317 reservations are threatened by environmental hazards. Which, when you think about it, it's probably not them that are causing the environmental dangers. I mean, it's the rest of us, non-Native American people, that make up the major population of the world, and we're the ones who are destroying it. And they're known for their more natural remedies and not being like mainstream and using like corporation stuff. Today, Native American women are 3.5 times more likely to be sexually or physically abused. Up to 70% of these abuse cases go unreported, often due to the fact that they have mistrust for the government and the police agencies because they're used to having their promises violated and stuff because of the Trail of Tears. 70% of the violence experienced by Native American women come from non-Native American men. About 1 in 10 racially motivated bias crimes are targeted towards Native American people. And this is from the Department of Justice, so it's like a totally legit fact. American Indian and Alaskan youth suffer disproportionately higher rates of trauma, substance abuse, and youth suicide. When we think about Native Americans, just close your eyes for a minute and picture a Native American in your mind. You probably are picturing like some half-naked person riding around on a horse, being like, oh, and like shooting buffalo with bows. Like, this isn't how they are. I mean, they don't go out and kill people. Like, I know a lot of people who have said that when they travel and they say they're from Oklahoma, people are like, oh wow, do you live in a teepee and you ride like a horse to school? Well, no, that's not. We're different people, and Native Americans, they're not violent people, and they don't ride horses, and they don't live in teepees. They're just like us. And so here's a quote from the U.S. Bishops, A Time for Remembering. All of us need to examine our own perceptions of Native Americans, how much they are shaped by stereotypes, distorted by media portrayals or ignorance. We fear that prejudice and insensitivity toward Native peoples is deeply rooted in our culture and in our local churches. And this is a really good quote because it just reminds us to remember, to clear our minds of those stereotypes and just go by what we know. So we should just really not judge people in conclusion. I mean, you should think about what people are today, not judge them on what they were in the past. Because the fact is, you probably don't even know what they were in the past. You should just use what you know and don't judge people, because that's really bad.
Like Geronimo, if he got picked on at giraffe school because he is 3/4 Native American, his life would just be terrible. I mean, it's bullying all over again, and that's just terrible. It's bad.
That's terrible. Isn't that right,
It is very
Geronimo?
terrible. All right, thank you, folks.